normal people become terrified of criminals.
Shots were just fired. Police just came out and told us, and we're headed there right now.
They become terrified of their own government.
Atlanta Antifa militants claim to have torched concrete company trucks in effort to stop Cop City. This is an ongoing terror campaign currently taking place in Atlanta. There have been 61 indictments, but guess what? As Julie pointed out, but as we're starting the show, these are state level and not federal level. So Antifa is actively engaged. These are people who are part of cells. These are people who have come from outside the country. We know this. And they have cells all over the country. They work with each other. They organize. They have plans. They have workbooks. And we are told consistently the far right is the real threat. I want to add something. In the previous segment, we were talking about the jury tax or the trial tax where they force people to take plea bargains. Dinesh was pointing out that he can get, you tell me about your life and he can point out 3 felonies. I want to tell you guys something, and then I want to open the conversation up to January 6th and your film, The Police State. On January 20th, 2017, several hundred far leftists stormed through Washington, D.C., throwing Molotov cocktails. I should tone it down a little bit. Setting fires in the street, torching vehicles, smashing windows, and fighting with cops. Several hundred got arrested. I know I was one of those people who got arrested. I was released after I asked a supervisor, and I showed him my press pass. He told me, too bad, you're under arrest, you're not free to go. And then eventually a supervisor ordered the release of journalists, of which I was then de-arrested by the police. I was never processed. This group was, all of these people were charged. And guess what? Not only did most of them have the charges dropped, the city paid them millions of dollars. And it was for one reason. They all refused to take a plea deal. The state was struggling, or I shouldn't say the state, the federal government. These are the feds. They almost never lose cases, but they could not get any of these individuals. Why? Antifa wear all black for a reason. It doesn't matter if a cop actually sees you. A cop could see you. You could take your mask off. You could smile and you can wave. And when it comes to the criminal trial, the defense will say, what was the defendant wearing? And it'll say a black hoodie, a black bandana, a black jeans with black gloves. And you say he looked at you and smiled. That's right. Could you have been mistaken? I mean, there were 300 people wearing the exact same thing. And the cop will say, no, it was him. And they'll look at the jury and be like, do you believe that? That he actually knew who this guy was with everyone wearing the same thing? They couldn't get him on conspiracy charges, and they couldn't get anyone to believe that they singled out individuals with crimes. So the entire group, in their organized act of terrorism at Donald Trump's inauguration, were not only having their charges dismissed, but they were paid out millions of dollars.
And let's not forget the 529 insurrection.
Absolutely.
When they broke down the barriers outside of the White House and forced the president of the United States into a bunker instead of
firebombed the White House grounds.
That's right. And the media's concern about that was that Trump was very mean and he used tear gas so that he could get across the street and stop them from burning down a historic church.
If they, just like Dinesh was saying earlier, just by talking to someone, you can come up with, multiple felonies. If the federal government actually wanted to stop this kind of stuff, they absolutely could.
I think this is the key that for years now, we have focused on the rhetoric of the double standard.
Yeah, we live in the logic of Herbert Marcuse.
Look at the way that the government treats Trump versus Biden. Look at the treatment of Antifa versus Antifa BLM on the one hand versus, let's say, the January 6th protesters on the other. Now, how do you resolve a double standard? Because a double standard usually has a kind of a hidden premise. And the hidden premise here is that we have a government that wants to apply the law equitably. And if that is the case, then there certainly is a double standard. They're not doing that. Yeah. But let's remove that assumption. Let's assume that you're dealing with an emerging police state, and now it's a police state, but we're not North Korea, right? If we were North Korea or China, I couldn't make a movie called Police State. So we have to be a police state in the making, under construction, if you will. And if a police state is under construction, it needs political allies. It would ideally like to have a whole political party that is in bed with the police state that's going to help build it. And so the police state is going to say, the police state now becomes like the family dog. Notice how the family dog is really friendly to members of the family and barks at strangers. So the family dog is not a hypocrite. The family dog can distinguish between the pals and strangers. And similarly, the police state is friendly toward the people who are helping to build the police state, even as it is unremittingly hostile to anybody that it sees as a threat to the police state. And if you apply the single standard, it all makes sense. You don't have a double standard anymore. They're acting consistently.
It's a hierarchy.
That's absolutely right. Well, you can also recognize them as the militant arm of the party that's in power, basically. And we've seen this historically. Communists have always done this. The communists did this in Spain, where people who are non-government officials or weren't necessarily commissioned to by the government were going and digging up the dead bodies of nuns and priests and displaying them in churches in order to persecute Christians. And the government just wouldn't arrest them when they did it. Because, of course, they were perfectly happy to see them do that. And that was the fact of the matter. And that's what we have in the United States today. Antifa and BLM run around burning down buildings, destroying people's lives, doing violence against innocent people. And even though they aren't technically owned or told to do this by the Democratic Party or the political establishment, it allows them to, so it's just the same.
When people share an ideology, they don't need direct orders from top-down authority. If they all are looking for essentially the same result, which is to delegitimize the fundamental principles that the United States is built on, if they're looking for that result, all the tactics that they come up with, they're all acceptable. Tim's talked about shared a diversity of
tactics.
Yeah, Tim's talked about that a bunch of times.
When you go to a left liberal protest where there's thousands of people, you will see what they look, man. These people lie because in their worldview, lying to accomplish your goal is fine. The ends justify the means. And what you end up with is a wide range from liberal to far left extremist tankies. And they all say the same thing. Respect the diversity of tactics. And I would ask them what that means. And they would say, well, not everybody agrees there's one way to bring about change. So if someone that we may not completely agree with how they're doing things, but we're mostly aligned politically, we just back off and let them do their thing.
I want to point something out right now. October 7th, the attack in Israel, that was a diversity of tactics.
Yes.
That's the same exact thing. And that's why you see the left.
In New York City, people saying they're freedom fighters, decolonize. This is what people should pay attention to. Not every single person who is in support of Palestine is in support of Hamas. Fair point. Not every single person who was marching knows exactly what they're protesting, but they're all told the same thing by the organizers to respect the diversity of tactics, is the phrase they use. Now think about what that means. When a guy stands up with a megaphone and celebrates 5,000 rocket attacks exploding over Tel Aviv or hitting some of these hospitals or whatever, when they cheer for their resistance fighters, these other liberals who don't really know a lot are told, but you have to respect it. And so they may not 100% align, but they don't interfere as these people advocate for these things. Here's the important takeaway. You may not care about Israel, Palestine, or the United States. I think domestic issues are way more important. Totally fair. But when you have people marching alongside pro-Hamas extremists, and these people don't care about Hamas, but they're holding up decolonize signs and clapping for the freedom fighters, understand what their mentality is here in the United States. They would do exactly as Hamas did here to accomplish their goals.
100%.
To the point where Hassan Piker on his show said, but some of those babies are settlers, in reference to the justification of killing settlers, referencing that babies are also settlers. I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'd like to, but I think it's very dangerous when a dude has consistently been in support of, like, look, when Hassan literally says that Hamas is just morally and legally in the right to do these things, to reclaim stolen land, and then adds, and babies are settlers, I just don't see, I don't see why we should give him the benefit of the doubt.
Hassan, we also, this is such an awkward topic because until you have a firsthand experience, it is difficult to believe. Now, Julie, for example, you've sat in on so many trials, right? And we've talked a little bit about this. I mean, you almost feel like you're living in a surreal America because you're seeing it, and yet it is a knowledge that is a little incommunicable. For me, like a turning point in my whole career was, if you had asked me 10 years ago or 15 years ago, like, what's American politics in a nutshell? I would go, well, it's like a debating society. You've got the left, you got the right. You have two different visions. These people value liberty. These people value equality, equality of rights, equality of outcomes. And you put these rival visions before the American people, and the people choose. And sometimes they go this side, sometimes they go that side. And then when I was sitting across from the lawyers of the Obama DOJ, and I realized in this conversation I'm having with these guys that for a trivial offense, if they could have locked me up for 10 years, they would have done it. And I realized, whoa, Well, that's a wrecking ball in my whole theory of American politics. Or even all the guys I knew, I lived in D.C. So it's a small town. I knew E.J. Dionne at the Washington Post. I knew guys at all the different, liberal outlets. And I saw these guys in Trover Bookstore. I saw them in restaurants. When my case came up, they'd come up to me. They'd be like, Dinesh, man, looks like you're really being shafted. And I'd be like, okay, EJ, well, if I'm being shafted, Megyn Kelly's saying that on Fox News, but it'd be really helpful if you said that in the Washington Post. Because for a liberal to defend me against Obama, I got that kind of awkward, I can't really do that.
Yeah.
And then you realize, again, that this is not quite the America you thought you were living in. It's become gangsterized.
No, politics is America's most extreme and crazy team sport. You have to be loyal to your side no matter what. And I think that's true on both sides. It's really easy to see where the left locks down. In some ways, they're more effective, right? They're able to get a lot of young people to go out and do their bidding by saying these trigger words and saying colonizer, and then they all know exactly what side they're against. But I also think that the right does this too, where there are some portions of the party where they say, I'm too afraid to say anything. I mean, that was what I found really interesting about the Freedom Caucus, right? They, all of these people started saying, these are our values. We have American first values we want to push forward. And they gained traction even though the mainstream RNC was not super comfortable with it.
Well, they're being defeated and it feels pretty good. So hearing Kevin McCarthy elbowed Burchett in the back, I'm like, man, he's losing it. But so be it. The stories that I've heard about the things the established Republicans have done to good Americans who wanted to serve this country and sometimes serve it again, this time as public officers. Good riddance to this extremism and tribalism.
So I'll circle back a little bit to the Daily Wire here because a thought just occurred to me that with regard to the Candace business, and that is that Daily Wire has been out of sync with Trump, right? They've been kind of part of the Never Trumper camp and so on, and they're a very successful company. But it's a little tricky for them as a brand. You're a very successful company, but you're out of sync with the mainstream of the Republican Party. So Daily Wire needs some MAGA spirit, if only to deflect the Never Trumpism that's clearly in Daily Wire. So Candace actually has a lot of leverage because she represents that. She comes in from that kind of MAGA wing, if you will. And then Daily Wire can say, as Jeremy Boring has said, we are open to all different points of view and so on. And
they can ask themselves, why is her audience loyal to her? I mean, it makes them potentially expand their business model.
Of course. Exactly. That's my point, is that the Daily Wire, there's always a little bit of a danger that they go the way of the National Review.
Yes.
The National Review dug in on anti-Trump, on Never Trump, would not back off, and pushed out Victor Davis Hanson, who was basically the one
crime,
the one pro-Trump guy, and a historian who knows more than all of them put combined.
He's brilliant. He's great.
Yeah,
a lot of people right now are very critical of the Daily Wire, especially in our chat. But I hope this is worth at least something. Man, when I sit down with big corporate media companies and lawyers, and I've rejected all of them, it is the most annoying and insulting thing. I've had companies send me contracts where they're like, here's the deal, here's what we want to do. I'm like, this sounds great. We shake hands. They send me a contract, totally the opposite, that steals everything and is destructive. And the response is, well, hire a lawyer and redline it. And when I sat down with Jeremy, it was like talking, it was legit. And I really do respect that. I feel bad for him with all this going on. I hope at the end of it, there's no bad blood. Candace and Ben get along. I hope this resolves itself, generates some press for him. It's not just about, I know them and I don't like it when people fight, but it really is also about if we're all in agreement on 90% of things, then come on, man. If the far left can all wear the same clothes and get away with committing crimes, we're not even anywhere like trying to advocate for anything close to that. We're just saying, guys, let's focus on the issues that we need to focus on and stop tearing each other down.
Well, we want to build a parallel economy, and to do that, And we're in a hard business because people block you. You can't advertise on YouTube and you can't put your ads up on Facebook, and then Walmart won't sell your DVDs. So if you can build a successful company with that wind against you, you're doing something right. So that's...
Yeah. And I think no matter what happens right now at the Daily Wire, they have done a lot of really positive things.
Oh, I think we just lost your mic. Did you?
I touched my wire one time. I said that the Daily Wire has done positive things. We don't need a monolith of every single news organization or, alternative media company saying exactly the same thing, but they themselves have to tolerate a little bit of diversity of thought.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.